Good evening, everyone. My name is Cadyn Raisbeck. And before we begin, I'll be honest with you guys, I have no idea at all what I'm doing up here. I started memorizing this speech this morning. And, giving a TED Talk sounded absolutely mortifying, so I decided to pick a topic that makes it even worse. Imposter syndrome. Because nothing else screams better, this feels like a mistake, like talking on stage how you constantly feel like one. Imposter syndrome is the belief that your success is undeserved. That you've somehow fooled everyone into believing you're somehow smarter, better, or more capable than you actually are. That someone made a mistake. It's not just self-doubt. It's a fear that you're going to be found out. You think it'll get better with success, but more often than not, it just gets worse. Imposter syndrome was first coined in 1978 by Suzanne Imes and Pauline Clance, where they had discovered it in themselves. Despite being some of the most renowned psychologists of their time, they both felt like frauds and inferior to their peers. So they decided to ask their students if they felt the same way, and countless of them said that they did each and every single day. So, as psychologists do, they decided to conduct a study about it. And unlike what they thought, there were so many more people that felt imposter syndrome than they could have ever imagined. And that study focused initially only on high-achieving women, but later studies found that it is something that affects people from all sorts of walks of life. And that study, and later studies, have also found that there is a very high correlation with imposter syndrome and more severe mental illness, such as anxiety, depression, and self-worth issues, myself included. So my imposter syndrome didn't just come with needing a lot of academic validation, it also came with two guests, anxiety and depression. Like the worst group project you can ever imagine. Anxiety told me that no matter what I would try to do, I would fail. And depression told me that I needed to keep on trying more, or else I wasn't good enough. And I know there are so many others that are going through the same bits. But I didn't know there was a name for imposter syndrome until recently. I just called it burnt out gifted child, or anxious overachiever, or whatever the countless other words for it can be. But I also found out that there are multiple different types of imposter syndrome that are used to identify it in different people. And Science Today actually finds that there are 5 different archetypes of imposter syndrome, all with their own unique characteristics. And these archetypes really help demonstrate how imposter syndrome arises in different people. The first, before I begin, if you'll bear with me for a second, if any of these strike a chord with you, don't hesitate to raise your hand. I'll be doing it as well. So the first type is the perfectionist. They feel that if they're not perfect and don't do everything completely right, then they feel like a fraud. And then next is the expert, which feels that they will never know enough about what they want, no matter what or how much they try. The next up is the natural genius, which believes if they don't master something in the first try, they are simply a failure. Next up is the soloist, which believes reaching out for help and asking people for assistance is a sign of weakness and failure. And lastly is the super person, who constantly overworks themselves in an attempt to prove to the world and themselves that they're not a fraud. Now I noticed that some people in the audience raised their hand multiple times for each one. And don't worry, I did too. Me raising my hand for each one wasn't just for show. I really do feel like I have bits and pieces of every single type. Like I'm some sort of amalgamation or homunculus filled with anxiety and depression. But my story with imposter syndrome began long, long ago. It has its roots when I almost failed first grade, where I had a speech impediment so bad I almost never spoke in class. And by the middle of the academic school year, I had practically given up on my own education. But it wasn't only struggling with words. It was teaching myself that silence felt safer than being wrong. I taught myself that silence was the best way to stop yourself from being found out. I realize now that that was my first brush with imposter syndrome. I still remember all the days staying after school, trying to make up everything, and trying to prove to myself and the world that I wasn't the fraud that I felt I was on the inside. And I got over it eventually, but that feeling of not quite measuring up to the person right next to you, it never really went away. But fast forward to today's time, this year I actually got into Yale University, one of the top colleges of the entire world. And when I first got that acceptance letter, my first thought was, there's no way they sent this to the right person. They must have sent it to the wrong Cadyn Raisbeck. Which sounds absurd, but that's what imposter syndrome really does for you. And it actually took me a couple days to begin telling people that I got into Yale, because in every bone in my body, I believe that they would have sent me a letter saying that was a complete accident and that they revoke everything. But eventually I had to get over that in one way or another, and I realized that a top college wouldn't make a mistake like that. So, after I finally had realized, the obvious to most people, I really thought I would feel proud of myself, or excited, or little bits of nervous, but happy. And while I did a little, it wasn't from me being proud of myself. It was from me being happy that I didn't have to let everyone down by not making it in. But the funny thing is, with playing a role and forgetting the lines, I know I'm not alone. I know there are so many people who feel just like that. So, for example, there was a famous study a couple years back in 2020 by the Journal of General Internal Medicine that found that 82% of people struggle with imposter syndrome throughout their lives. 82%. That is 4 out of 5. And it's not just students. It's CEOs, doctors, lawyers. It's people who are the smartest in their fields. So, if they feel like imposters, it's not surprising that more us regular people don't also feel like, or that us regular people also feel like imposters and frauds. We always see everyone's best moments. We only see their Canva-made resumes, their achievements, their awards, all sorts of academic validations, their best grades, the parties they go out with their friends that seem perfect, their perfectly filtered lives and carefully captioned posts. But we don't see the late nights that they spend worrying, anxious. We don't see all those feelings of self-doubt that they hide. And we don't see the same voice that they have that we also do. Because that's what imposter syndrome is. It isolates you. It makes it feel like you're the only one that doesn't know what they're doing when everyone else in the world has it all figured out. But you're not alone. Because I guarantee, if you open up the mind of even the most confident and bright people in the world, they will have the exact same sense of doubt and worry and concern that tells them they don't belong. I actually experienced this on a personal level with one of the smartest friends I know said that his parents have compared him to me. And I was shocked, I was floored, because all of our years of our friendship, I've been looking up and admiring him. But it turned out he was doing the same back to me. And that moment really made me realize that every single person is hiding those feelings of self-doubt, no matter how perfect they seem. Every single one of us have those self-doubt and concern. And all of us are just stuck in the same cycle. We are all just performing our competence, hoping that nobody notices the cracks. And that's why this talk isn't about how to overcome or get rid of imposter syndrome. It's about recognizing that every single one of us have it in some shape or form. My parents raised me to be self-reliant. I've always prided myself on being independent. But one of the unfortunate side effects of that is that whenever I struggle, I feel like I failed, or that I am failing. But struggling isn't failing. I know there are so many people in this room who are feeling the exact same way so often. Struggling isn't failure. Struggling is learning. Struggling means that you keep on going even when it's hard. And sometimes I like to tell myself that you don't need to be perfect to belong. You don't need to be ready to start. And you don't have to earn the right to take up space. So whenever that little voice of doubt creeps into my head and tells me you don't belong, you don't know what you're doing, I try to smile at it and say, neither does anyone else. And maybe the biggest lie we've been told is that we all should. Maybe not knowing is okay. Maybe not knowing is the beginning of something real. You don't need to be perfect to be worthy. You don't need to be fearless to be brave. You don't need to know what you're doing to take that first step. Imposter syndrome feeds on isolation, on that loneliness. So, what's the antidote? Talk to others. Open up. Tell them that you feel the same. Because when you're talking with them and you say, yeah, I actually feel the same way, that's not only helping you, it's helping to give them a breath of fresh air. You belong. You belong even if you don't feel you belong. You belong especially when you feel you don't belong. And if we remember to remind ourselves and those around us of that, maybe we won't have to keep on faking it till we make it. Maybe we'll fake it until we make it something real. Thank you.